Hello and welcome to the StopDevaluation podcast. I'm your host and founder of the StopDevaluation movement, Melody Hilton. The heart of this movement is to see the value in all of humanity and live courageous lifestyles of using our power for good instead of harm. We can affect change by choosing validation over judgment, and I hope you'll take your place and make a positive impact in this world. Welcome, everyone, to the StopDevaluation movement. And our guest today is Marlaina Centeno. I'm so glad you're here, Marlaina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Melody.
I am honored that you are partnering with the StopDevaluation movement, and I am so thrilled because I know you're bringing such a beautiful expertise to the table. And I know that wherever there's been any form of injustice or traumatic events, we often spend our lives just searching for healing. And I believe your expertise will provide everyone with hope and tools for healing. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, how do you define trauma and how does it have an impact on a person's life?
Yeah, well, again, thanks so much for having me here. I'm happy to be sharing about trauma, but then also the hope of healing from trauma. So trauma can be defined as an event or an experience that leaves an individual overwhelmed with three things: intense fear, helplessness, or horror. So again, just an event or an experience that can leave someone feeling really overwhelmed with intense fear, helplessness, or horror. And that can be a variety of different things. We don't like to bucket it into, it can be only sexual abuse or only domestic abuse or only incarceration. No, it really is it could be a tropical storm, any event or experience that leaves one feeling those three things: fear, helplessness, or horror. And the way that trauma impacts our lives is that we can begin to feel separate. We begin to feel separated from other people who may not have had those kinds of experiences before. How we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves, like not really knowing what's happening on the inside of us, and even how we relate to God. If God was so good, then why did this bad thing happen to me? A lot of questions about that. And so it really changes the way that we see the world. We're no longer the same person anymore.
Right. I know you're just so motivated to help others heal from trauma. Do you personally have a story of trauma that has become your motivation to help others overcome?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's my story, really. My first memory was being about 2 or 3 years old and sitting on my mom's lap. She was bruised and bloody because my father had just abused her. She was in domestic violence situation with my father, and we were in a hospital, and she was trying to get cleaned up from that experience. And so I have a lot of memories of domestic abuse. My father was in jail for most of my life. There was sexual molestation, and there was a lot of instability in my home aside from those things happening, but we moved around a lot, and just lack of stability in the home and emotions. So those were kind of the prime ways that I experienced trauma growing up, and that as I walked my healing journey became my motivation to helping others.
Our pain really does become our purpose oftentimes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. What a challenge in your life. And just briefly, were there individuals that began to see your value and your worth and your potential that helped you to heal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the community that I went to for a safe space was my church community when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and having older people in my life to see that I had value began to speak a different language. And believe it or not, my dad, even though he was in jail and even though he had done those really horrible things to my mom, was always a voice of empowerment in my life.
Wow.
Because of his own trauma. he would remind me that my voice is valuable. I have something to say. It was very strange, but he always empowered me to use my voice and not to back down in the face of opposition or oppression. So my dad was always speaking life into me in that way. I would say my dad and also the leaders in the church that I was a part of when I was a kid, really speaking life and value. And I would say more recently, my husband reminding me that I have a voice and I have something to say, and there are people that need to hear my story. And as they hear my story, they themselves will become healed. And so, yeah, kind of those three kind of key components in my life. So the church community that I was a part of when I was a kid, my husband, and my dad, believe it or not.
That's beautiful. So let
Yeah.
me ask you a question. We're facing a lot of current traumatic events in our world, and we recognize it's really affecting us all in one way or another. But when someone has already experienced trauma and they're trying to process through their own individual pain, do you feel like the current traumatic events are making it more difficult for individuals who are already in places of trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happens is, for most of us, including myself, we didn't really process the pain and the trauma that I experienced as a child, right? I just survived. I did the things that I needed to do to survive and to cope.
Yeah.
I didn't have a safe space that I could go to and process and cry and grieve and lament and mourn. I just had to put on a happy face, go to school, get my work done, and come home and try to survive the next day.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really learn the proper coping skills. And so that doesn't go away, though. Like, that's the foundation of who we are as humans, is our childhood. And so when we grow up, we might think, oh, I don't have to think about those things that happened to me as a child. And some people can survive for very long with that. But what happens is, when there's a triggering moment that happens in our families, in our workplaces, just out in the grocery store, but specifically right now in our world, we're all under this pressure that a lot of people are being triggered in many different ways.
Yeah.
And it might not be directly related to the trauma. So I'm not in a domestic violence situation right now, specifically like my mom was, but being put in a pressure situation where I have to work from home makes me feel like I don't have control over my life. And I can't do what I want to do with the freedom that I have. And so I feel pressure, and then that causes a trigger, and then I'm lashing out at my family, and I don't know why. So that's like a direct correlation. And I think specifically as Black people, as a Black woman living in America, there's an greater, like, we constantly live with the trauma of seeing our brothers and sisters being devalued and dehumanized and murdered in front of our eyes. And so there's that constant triggering moments that happen in our lives. When someone that's been traumatized, there's a couple ways that they respond. They, constantly have like this reliving the experience. So thinking about it all the time with nightmares or flashbacks, or just really, it's hard to concentrate in school or work. So there's like these reliving moments that we might have. But then you can also go to the far end of like just avoiding all reminders of the trauma. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to go to those places. I go numb. I numb myself with excessive drinking or drugs or pornography or work or food. There's like a numbing that happens as well. And then another way is just being on alert all the time, like just hyper vigilant. I'm afraid, I'm jumpy, I'm tense, I'm irritable, I have headaches and stomach aches. Like, there's a wide variety of how people respond when they're triggered. And I think the culture that we live in right now, it's like it's like a minefield. Like, it's constant triggering moments. Again, specifically as a Black person living in America, that keeps seeing these moments. It's like it's hard to even begin the process of healing when there's a constant reminder of the traumatic incident that has happened to you. So absolutely. I think the current events that are happening, and even including COVID, like I said, being stuck at home, there can feel like a lack of freedom or a lack of mobility or a lack of just, I want to do what I want to do. Taking away control is really re-traumatizing to people and triggering to people. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people right now are responding from a place of unprocessed pain from
Yes.
when they were children, but being triggered by the pressures that are happening in our society right now.
It's really true. When we feel powerless, it opens us up to so much fear. And we do all types of crazy things to try to gain back our power. But
Yep.
really, we need to be healed and recognize how powerful we truly are, and that we have the power to begin to walk through different steps and different processes, and that there is a community of people that are there to help. So I know that you believe it's important for people to get the help that they need from those who
Yeah.
are trained in overcoming trauma and working with people and understanding the triggers and understanding the different ways that we anesthetize ourselves, those type of
Mhm.
things. But
Mhm.
generally speaking, and this is what I'm really excited about in this interview, is for you to tell someone who's listening to this how
Yeah.
they can begin to walk through, how they can begin to be healed from trauma. Maybe there's no one in
Mm.
their life, or they can't get out of their house, or they're just in a
Mm.
situation where there isn't a trained individual they can go to. But
Yeah.
if there's some basic things that a person can do or learn or understand that can help them right where they're at right now, I would love to hear your thoughts on those things.
Yeah. Well, let me speak directly to that person. If you're listening right now and you find yourself reliving traumatic experiences and you can't seem to get over it, like you want to, you have a heart to just, I don't want to think about this anymore. I don't want it to affect my life, but I can't. I don't know how. I want to speak specifically to the person that's always jumpy. Just
Mm.
any little sound or movement just causes you to be on guard, or you have nightmares all the time, or you know that you're numbing pain. You know that you don't want to go there, and you're overusing food or alcohol or other addictive behaviors. You know it. And I don't have to tell you that it's wrong or right. I just need to acknowledge the fact that you are trying to cope and live in this really volatile world. I just want to say that I see you. I'm literally closing my eyes right now. I see you.
Mm.
I hear your cry for help. Um, and I'm here. I'm here for you. And so hopefully I can just share a couple things that can help you to start on this healing journey. I heard a quote the other day that really stuck with me. And it was, the more we move away from pain, the more ingrained our trauma response becomes.
Wow.
And I know that that sounds really scary. Like, no, the pain is inside of me. I want to do everything I can to get away from the pain inside of me. I hear you. I know where you are. But I'm here to tell you that as you walk through the pain, that or you move further away from the pain and continue to numb, that it will actually become more ingrained in who you are. I know it sounds crazy, but I've lived that life.
Mm.
And so I want to encourage you to begin, just to begin in a gentle way, because this is not easy work, is to begin to acknowledge your story. And that was the first step that I needed to do, was just acknowledge that bad things happened to me. Bad things happened to me. I did not feel safe as a child. I didn't feel seen or heard. And the first thing that I had to do, without judgment of my parents, was acknowledge that it was harmful for me. And so I would
Yes.
say the first step is just acknowledging your story, whatever that is. And it doesn't have to be from when you were a child. It can be from, again, from just being a Black person in America and acknowledging that it is painful, it is hard. It can be that you are experiencing some difficulties at work and it feels crushing to you. Acknowledging that pain is really the first step to healing. I would say the second step is finding ways to calm strong emotions, because we all have these trauma responses, which can look like, again, lashing out or anger, irritability, overeating, whatever. Finding ways to calm strong emotions when they come that are not harmful for us. Um, and I want to take off the judgment that if you are doing any of these things to survive, you are doing what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to tell you that's wrong, bad, whatever. I'm just saying, just acknowledge it. Acknowledge that I am doing these things that may not be helpful for me, without judgment or shame. And I would say replacing those things one by one. Again, this is hard work, but one by one with possibly a breathing exercise. Breathing in for 4 breaths and holding it for a second, and then breathing out for 8. Practicing breathing and finding your breath, because you might not have a journal, a pen, a friend, a loved one to call on, but you will always have your breath with you. And so finding a way, and there's lots of studies that show that simple breathing exercises actually calm strong emotions, can take you out of that fight or flight of responding when you don't want to. Yoga helps with that. Prayer helps with that. And those are some ways that you can, begin to calm your strong emotions after you've acknowledged them, right? Acknowledging that this is my story. I'm feeling a lot of emotions around my story, calming those emotions in helpful ways. And I would say the third being finding a community. And I know that you really spoke really well to the fact, Melody, to the fact that people might not have community. That's the hard part of the day that we live in, especially with COVID. You might not be able to go out and find a community of people that feel safe for you. But there are some communities online right now that could help you feel safe. And that may be, again, you might not have access to a counselor or therapist. I believe in that. I think you absolutely should find that, but that might not be available to you. So the community that I have, Wholehearted Women, is for women specifically. And it's a safe space where you can begin to work through some of these pains and trauma. So wholeheartedwomen.net, you can search for us there. And I would also say just continuing to search. There's a lot of online social media groups that you might have to try and find a couple different groups that feel safe to you. But I think they're out there if you begin to search. And if you can't, again, reach out to me, male or female, and I will help you find a safe community. That could be your church. That could not be a church. That might not feel safe for you at all. But it could be a church community. It could be your work community. Just some place, even if it's just one other person that you feel has been a safe person that listens well and doesn't judge you. And they can really hear your story, again, without judgment. And I would say kind of a fourth one is like a bonus one is beginning to become curious about what you need. I think a lot of times we just go through life not really asking ourselves, what do I need to feel safe? One of the first steps in trauma healing is being a part of a safe community and is finding that safe space, but you might not even know what that means for you. And so asking yourself, what do I need to feel safe? What resources do I have available to me to feeling safe? Is it just having a journal available to you that is safe and private? That could be the one thing that you need to feel safe, is just a note in your phone to begin to write down your story that you can lock and nobody has access to. That could be the one thing. It could be one person that you can begin to share your story with, or it can be, again, that greater community of people that look like you and have the same experiences. And so if I can recap, just the acknowledging your story is a good way to start healing from trauma. Acknowledging that bad things happened, you did not feel safe or loved, protected, whatever that was for you. I would say the second way is finding ways to calm strong emotions, such as a breathing exercise, yoga, prayer, without judgment of the ways that you calmed your emotions before. And I would say the third thing, maybe flipping this, is asking yourself what you need to feel safe. And then the fourth being finding a community that feels safe for you. I'm a strong believer that healing happens in community. We're not meant to be alone. And that's where healing can really have its fullness. So
that is so beautiful. And I want to say to each person, I want you to know how valuable you are. And nothing that happened to us defines us. And I want you to know that you are worth every ounce of investment, and we value you deeply. Thank you so much, Marlaina. Before we close, is there anything else you feel that you just want to say to our audience?
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of resources out there, and it can seem really overwhelming. But something I often have to say to myself, even I'm, feeling like I'm, continuing and further along on my healing journey. But something I have to remind myself is one step at a time.
Yes.
One story at a time, one step at a time. You do not have to go on a crazy, I have to fix myself, journey. It's like, no, I want to tell you and encourage you to be gentle with yourself. Yeah, that's what I would say.
True.
Be gentle with yourself.
Be gentle with yourself. Thank you so much. We are just so honored that today you shared your heart, your passion, your love for all of humanity, and even to speak into some of the situations that we're facing as a nation and how we are responding to it emotionally and mentally. And so I appreciate you so much, and thank you for being a part of the StopDevaluation movement, Marlaina.
Thank you so much for having me. I fully support this, and I think it's the right way forward. So thank you.
I want to thank you for listening and encourage you to become a part of the StopDevaluation movement. Be sure to like and follow #StopDevaluation on social media, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and visit StopDevaluation.com for more information and free resources. You can help spread the movement by sharing with others, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, and most of all, by living a courageous lifestyle of using your power for good. Go out and value someone today. Your life matters, and you can make the world a better place. One word, one choice, one action of validation at a time.